This is a challenge to Ariel Helwani, and it's a challenge for Ariel Helwani to prove to me and the rest of the MMA community that 1, he is not a hypocrite, 2, that he genuinely cares for the victims of domestic abuse, and 3, that he did not use and hide behind the morality of being against domestic abuse in all of its forms to get back at Dana White, and he genuinely is against domestic violence. Okay? And that's what I'm going to try and get at in this video, because I truly believe, and I'm going to say this before the video starts, I think Ariel's a pretty good guy. I'm not attacking him as a person in general. I'm attacking him on this very specific thing that I think he's really messed up on, and I think that he needs to be held accountable for as well. I'm not challenging Ariel Helwani as a journalist either, or his journalistic integrity. I think Ariel is probably the greatest MMA journalist in the history of the sport. But this I have a problem with, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
Smart move on Jon's part. Would love to talk to Jon one of these days. Jon, if you're out there, would love to have you on to pick your brain about the last few years. He has been relatively quiet, and I think that
Ariel Helwani calling for Jon Jones to be on his podcast, on his live stream, on his show, and he says it very happily. He's very smiley. He would love to have Jon Jones on his show. I want to compare this with some of the takes that Ariel Helwani had after Dana White's video came out where Dana White slapped his wife on camera after Dana White's wife slapped him first. Now remember, Jon Jones is a man, and you can go and look at the police report, who has had these domestic violence problems many times in his life. And Ariel says in this video that I'm going to show you as well, it doesn't matter that Dana and his wife are married. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter the problem. Dana White's terrible for doing what he did, and he shouldn't be allowed to bounce back. I'm going to show you that in this video, but I want to tell you, Dana's wife slapped him first, and Dana slapped her back. Terrible. He shouldn't have done it. Jon Jones beat his wife into a bloody mess. You can go and check the police report. There was blood all over her lip. Okay? She had blood coming out of her nose. There was blood pouring down her chin. Her sweater at the time was covered in blood. There was blood on the bed sheets of their hotel room. You can go and check the police reports. Okay? Their kids ran out and alerted security to call the police on their own dad, who had ran from the scene of his wife being covered in blood and covering the bed sheets and her own sweater in blood as well. And his wife had a shattered lip and a busted lip and blood all over her face when she went to the police and the security of the hotel room. Check the official results and information in the police report. Jones is a 10 times worse domestic violence case than Dana White's is. 10 times worse. Yet you want him on your show. I want to play you some moments of Ariel Helwani's reaction to Dana White and his wife's slap.
And so my question to all of you is, why does he get to bounce back?
I agree. Why does Jon Jones get to bounce back? Why does Jon Jones get to bounce back? I don't think he should be allowed on a show to promote his new fight, Ariel. Why don't you take a stand against it and not let him on his show and not let him on your show that you will benefit from? Take a stand against Jon Jones and don't let him on your show.
Why does he get to bounce back? He said it himself. You don't bounce back from hitting a woman, from putting your hands on a woman. And
You don't. I agree. Don't let Jon Jones on your show then. I will say this right now. Regardless how many views it gets me, I don't think Jon Jones ever would come on my show. I would never let Jon Jones on my show ever in life, ever. He's a scumbag. He's a domestic abuser. It's on police report. He's a disgusting human being. I don't care about demons. He did what he did. I will never have him on my show ever in my life. I've said it on record before. I'm sure someone can find that. Don't have him on your show, Ariel Helwani. Because he did what Dana White did. Maybe he shouldn't be allowed to bounce back. We move on to another moment. 14 minutes and 38 seconds into this.
I'm a fan of accountability. Like, there has to be some repercussions. I'm a fan of that.
There has to be some repercussions for Dana White. So let's have some repercussions that you can implement to show that you're really against domestic violence on Jon Jones. Don't let him on your show and don't do an interview that you just asked him to do in the build-up of the Garn fight that you were so happy to reach out to him for.
What kind of message are you sending the fighters on your roster, the employees who work for you, if You can be caught on camera striking a woman, which again, I believe full stop. It doesn't matter if you got struck 10 times. You don't strike a woman. That's just the way I believe. That's the way I was brought up. Those are my values. What kind of message are you sending to your fighters, to your employees, if that goes unpunished?
What kind of message would you be sending, Ariel? To your employees? Or not your employees, because you might be an employee yourself. But to the people that you work with. To ask someone to come on your show to help promote their fight that has been in a much worse case than Dana White on multiple occasions to do with domestic violence. What kind of message would you be sending if that goes unpunished to your morality? You should be holding Jon Jones accountable, Ariel Helwani, and not letting him on your show if you truly believe and are against domestic violence. That's my opinion.
If that goes away without any repercussion, what kind of message is that?
I agree. What kind of message is that? Could you imagine inviting someone on your show to help promote their fight after they just did that and it's on record, police report, and it's a 10 times worse case than Dana White's one? It makes Dana White's case look like nothing in comparison. What kind of message is that? What kind of person would do that, Ariel? I want to hold you accountable here, man. Because you've been having these 10-8s for too long. And I think it's time to humble yourself a little bit here. Because you've been sitting there on your high horse. And you've had a real stumble here, in my opinion. We move on to 15 minutes and 40 seconds. And there's way more to this.
What happens then? If you got away with it, how could you punish them? Now you're just a hypocrite.
Could you imagine being a hypocrite?
You don't do anything.
If you don't do anything, you're a hypocrite, Dana White. Could you imagine being a hypocrite? Could you imagine inviting someone on your show to help promote their fight after supposedly being against domestic violence and saying that there should be repercussion and they shouldn't be allowed to bounce back if they put their hands on a woman? Could you imagine?
All that being said, asking me right now, face to face, mano a mano, do I believe something's going to happen? The answer is no.
What a problem that is, that nothing happens to these people that do that. What a massive problem that is, that nothing happens to them. Maybe you should make a stand and be the one to do something about it and not have Jon Jones on your show to promote his fight. And that's how you should punish Jon Jones. Maybe that's what you should do. You shouldn't maybe profit and have a good, well-viewed show with a domestic violence guy on. We move on because there's so much more. We go to 18 minutes and 4 seconds. There's so many more things I want to tackle here.
To me, isn't enough. That to me isn't enough. If you want to know, and I'll never, ever, 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 ever get over this. If you want to know what Dana White and the UFC truly think about domestic violence, look no further than January of 2019, the very first show on ESPN. Look no further than that show. Still to this day, I can't believe, and I bet there are new fans who don't even know that this happened. Greg Hardy, with his past, with his resume, with his rap sheet, with his history of domestic violence, Greg Hardy was put on the first ESPN card. That alone was shocking to me.
Crazy to you, isn't it? Could you imagine if Jon Jones, with his rap sheet and his record and his history with domestic violence, was put on your show to promote his fight? And could you imagine if you asked him to come on because you wanted him to be on your show? Could you imagine? Look no further than that example. If you ever have Jon Jones on your show again to help him promote his fights, look no further than that to know where Ariel Helwani stands on domestic violence, really. Look no further than that to know where Ariel Helwani stands. With a guy like Jon Jones and his rap sheet and his history with domestic violence, to be allowed to be on your show, front and center, to promote his next fight. Look no further than that to see where Ariel stands on domestic violence. Don't have him on your show. Prove a point. Punish him. Because there has been no punishment for Jones. Punish him. The shame of the public knowing about it is not enough. As you said yourself about the Dana White situation, it's not enough. We need to come down on this as a problem. Punish him. Don't let him on your show.
Brooklyn, New York, Barclays Center, the big debut on ESPN Plus and ESPN National. Massive. That alone was shocking to me, that they would put Greg Hardy, of all people, who had no business being in the UFC, let alone fighting on the first ESPN card in such a massive moment in the history of the sport. That alone was shocking. But you know what was even more freaking shocking? And you know what said it all about how they feel about these sorts of things? Is that they put him on the same card as Rachel Ostovich, who some 3, 4, 5 weeks earlier, less than that, was involved in her own domestic violence situation.
I completely agree with you, Ariel. Don't have Jon Jones on your show then. Stick to your own words. Keep the same energy, Ariel. Carry yourself the way you expect other people to be carried, or to carry themselves. Carry yourself how you expect, and are angry at the UFC for not carrying themselves as. Don't have Jon Jones on your show, because that would say a lot about where you really stand on the domestic violence problem. We move on to another moment, which is at 25 minutes and 57 seconds. And there's way more to this. 25 minutes and 57 seconds. Give me a second here to skip all the way through. No, this is 24. We move on. 25:57 on the clock.
Even advocating for anything again. You know, there needs to be repercussions. There needs to be accountability.
I agree. There does. So don't have Jon Jones on your show.
I don't think there will be. Prove me wrong.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Prove me wrong, Ariel.
Color me surprised. I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. But to me, if you want to know my stance on it.
And here we hear Ariel's stance on the whole situation.
You don't touch a woman. You don't touch the mother of your kids. You don't touch your wife. You don't touch anyone. You walk away, and there's no excuse. Even though they tried to offer him excuses, there are absolutely no excuses. And as he said, you don't bounce back. And I agree.
You don't bounce back. You don't put your hands on women. So Jon Jones, who put his hands on women, and is known to because the police report specifically said that he did. And that's an official report by the investigators. It's in writing. It's very obvious what happened on that night. I agree, Ariel. You never do it. So don't let Jones bounce back. Have there be some accountability to Jones. Don't have him on your show like you want to have him on your show. Prove that you really are against what you say you're against. This is your moment to prove that. I believe. Coming at the UFC for allowing Greg Hardy the platform. Don't give Jon Jones the platform. Why does he get a pass with you? Because he can get you a lot of views? Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong and don't have him on your show ever again. We move on to another moment in the podcast, which is at 31 minutes and 12 seconds. And this is the end where he gets very emotional. And he has his very pre-written, I'm the Mr. Nice Guy, Cool Guy moment, 10-8 Helwani, like he's been having recently. Here's his moment where he gets real emotional when he uses Dana White's words that were said about him back at Dana White about this whole situation. Okay, so I want it to be specific. These aren't his own words that he's outright calling Dana White out for. This is what Dana White said to him, that he's spitting back at Dana White to get one back at him. And he has a real cool moment where he preemptively, and he knows this, he has organized for a domestic violence hotline to be played at the end of the stream after he, all cool, takes off his headphones and walks off the set in disappointment. All rehearsed and planned.
And so on this day, I'll raise the same freaking question that he raised about me back in 2016. What are your kids going to say about you? What are your kids going to say about your legacy, about the way you treat fighters, about the way you treat people, about your business practices? What are your kids going to say about that video? What are your kids going to say about the kind of person that you are? What are your kids going to say about you? Ask yourself that fucking question. What are your kids going to say about you? Awards coming up. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in a second.
And he has this cool moment where he looks into the camera, gets all emotional, and takes off his headphones and walks off to where the camera fades to black and it shows a domestic help hotline on the screen. And you get to look like the cool guy here that's against domestic violence and make Dana White to seem like an evil person, which he may be. What would your kids think about you, Ariel, if someone who was known to have abused their wife, and it was in a police report, blood all over her face, blood all over her sweater, Blood coming out of her nose, busted up lip, look at the police report, I'm not over-exaggerating this. Kids ran out of the room to tell the security to call the police on their own dad, who was beating up their mum in their hotel room. No excuse to hit a woman, so it doesn't matter if we don't know that Jon Jones's wife maybe slapped him first. Because in your example that you came up with, even if she hits you 10 times, you shouldn't put your hands on a woman. What would your kids think about you, Ariel, if you allowed someone with such a rich history as Jon Jones in domestic violence that's proven, and the rap sheet that he has? What would your kids think about you if you allowed him to come on your show for the gain of viewership to promote his fight against Cyril Gane at UFC 285? I'll let you brew on that, Ariel. You've been 10-8ing people for too long and feeling Mr. Big Man, but I noticed this hypocrisy a mile away. Prove to me that you aren't a hypocrite. Prove to me that you care about domestic abuse. And prove to me that you didn't do this I'm Mr. Cool, Mr. Good Guy routine by showing this hotline number at the end of your video. Prove to me you didn't do all of this just to get back at Dana White. Prove to me that you genuinely are against what you say you are against. UFC shouldn't have allowed Greg Hardy on their platform at all after his rap sheet. Don't let Jon Jones on your platform at all after his rap sheet. Keep that same energy. Fucking nerd. I know you're actually a nice guy. Maybe. Prove to me you are. I don't want to make any real personal ones. But prove to me you are a nice guy, dude. Because I think you could be. But I think you've really, really trodden it here. Walked right into this one. Maybe I'll play this one more time at the end of the video just to really hit home.
Would love to talk to Jon one of these days. Jon, if you're out there, would love to have you on to pick your brain about the last few years.
Let us know, Ariel. Where do you stand on domestic violence? Because I'll tell you this. If Ariel Helwani has Jon Jones on his show to talk, or doesn't walk back him wanting to have Jon Jones on his show to talk, look no further than that as an example to find out where Ariel Helwani stands on domestic violence.